beautiful souls. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. My name is Carolyn and this channel is all about true crime, mystery, and anything abnormal. I highly recommend subscribing because this channel is definitely a vibe. As you can see, Halloween has entered the picture. So today's story is very perplexing. We are talking today about the world's youngest serial killer. His name is Amarjeet Sada. He's from India and he became a serial killer at the age of 7. When I first heard about this story, I couldn't believe it. If you've watched the channel for a while, my very first video was about Mary Bell, who was a double murderer at 11. And in that case, I thought that was just wild. I had known about that case for so many years and it just intrigued me so much. And come to find out, this guy was 7. So let's get into the story of the world's youngest known serial killer. Amarjeet was born in 1998 in a small village in India. His parents worked extremely hard as laborers, but even though with the both of them working, it was very difficult to make ends meet and be able to provide enough for the family. The Sada family lived very, very below the poverty level. So when the family grew by 1, when the mother gave birth to a baby daughter when Amarjeet was only 7 years old, the conditions of the family definitely worsened. Amarjeet really enjoyed playing with random things. Things that other children necessarily wouldn't be that interested in seemed to interest him quite a lot. Another thing Amarjeet enjoyed doing was he loved going out, exploring the village, climbing trees, but he was very much on his own. He did sometimes play with the other kids, but the problem is that if the other boys were play fighting, they weren't, when normal kids play fight, so they're not actually trying to really hurt each other. They're just kind of play fighting, having fun. But to Amarjeet, he would just go full force in, like he was attacking this person to kill them almost. So very quickly, the other kids in the village didn't really like spending time with Amarjeet. But he was okay with that because he preferred being on his own. He was definitely very introverted and very quiet. During this period in 2006, Amarjeet is 7 at this time. His aunt comes to the family and she had a really good job opportunity in a city a little bit far away from the village where they were living. Her baby was 6 months old. She asked if the Sahad family could take care of her 6-month-old baby while she went off to do this job. It was a job where she couldn't bring her son with her, and it was a job that she was going to make quite a bit of money that would really help her kind of get ahead. So the family was more than happy to watch their nephew to help the aunt out so that she could go and do this job and not have to worry about her son. She knew her son was in good care with family who loved them. And I'm sure when that mother left her 6-month-old son there, she really did believe he was in the best hands possible and that he would be absolutely fine living with them. Unfortunately, she was completely wrong. Amarjeet's mother needed to go to the market to get some vegetables and some other errands that she had to run. So she left the 6-month-old nephew home alone with Amarjeet, who was 7. I understand those of us living in the Western world, it sounds a little wild that a 7-year-old would be left home alone to take care of a 6-month-old baby. But in these poor villages in India, that was very commonplace, where very young children would be left home alone. And I think part of it is that they were living in these villages that were very, very connected to each other, and everybody knew everybody and everyone looked out for each other. So when parents would have to leave a young child home alone, they didn't run into problems. Especially in this case with Amarjeet, he had been left home alone with his cousin, the 6-month-old, many times, and nothing had ever happened. I just wanted to kind of preface that because I can see that some may look at it and think, well, you left a 7-year-old alone with a 6-month-old. What the hell were you thinking? But this is in a country where this is commonplace, and it's something that's done, and it's done safely. So it's not like kids are getting left home alone and there's all of these accidents and things happening. It usually goes very smoothly and well. This case would definitely not go well. And things very quickly took an extremely dark turn. Amarjeet glanced at his 6-month-old cousin, and he started having very, very disturbing thoughts, and he began acting on them. He started by pinching the baby, and the baby obviously would cry because the baby's in pain. With that, Amarjeet continued with the torture and began smacking the baby. He couldn't help but laugh seeing the baby in pain, knowing that he was inflicting this pain and he was enjoying it. And things would just get even darker. He then put his tiny 7-year-old hands around the throat of the baby to stop it from breathing. Amarjeet then strangled the baby, and the baby passed away. But Amarjeet was not done yet. He took the deceased baby to a nearby forest, and he began using a rock to hit the baby in the head over and over and over. Some even suggest that he may have picked up the baby and hit it against the tree. He then proceeded to attempt to bury the baby under some dirt and some grass in the forest, and then he went home happy and proud of what he had just done. Amarjeet, like most killers, even though he was so young, he wanted recognition for what he had done. So naturally, he could not keep a secret, and he confessed to his mother. At first, his mother didn't believe him. She began searching the house for the baby, which it wasn't that big, so it didn't take long. And then Amarjeet walked her to the forest to show her what he had done. And I can't even imagine what would go through your mind seeing, first of all, this 6-month-old baby who was so badly beaten, and then knowing your 7-year-old son just did this. And he's not upset or remorseful or anything. He's excited by this. So his mother was in shock and didn't know what to do. So she decided to wait until her husband got home from work to tell him to figure out what to do. When the father got home and the mother told him what he did, Amarjeet's father beat Amarjeet very, very severely. But the parents then decided between the two of them that they were not going to go to the police. And in a lot of cases, parents generally don't like to turn in their children for crimes, especially something this severe. But I think most parents if they are ever in this situation, which obviously is not common, they're usually dealing with much older children. Like, they're usually dealing with teens or adults. Like, in this case, it's a 7-year-old. So I don't know exactly. It's a situation where I don't even know what I would do. Like, I feel like I would go to the police, but I'm just curious. At 7, do you think you would turn in your own child? I'm just very curious, because I've always been a very kind of firm believer in I would turn in someone. If they committed murder, I would turn someone in. That's just the way I feel. But if it was a 7-year-old, it made me really sit back and think, would I report a 7-year-old? But as this case will show, if the parents would have reported him, 2 more lives would be saved. So the parents decided the baby was already passed. There was nothing they could do to save it. So they decided that they were going to hide what their son had done. So they made up a fake story to tell the aunt when she came back to get her 6-month-old son, who was no longer alive. And no time had passed when Amarjeet was ready for his next victims. It was a cold afternoon, and the parents had gone and laid down to have a nap, which is very common in India, that where people will go and have like a quiet time in the afternoon. So the parents are sleeping in their bed, and Amarjeet is playing quietly with some toys. And that is when he looked at his 8-month-old sister and thought he wanted to do what he had done again. And she was right there, easy access for him. Even though he was smiling, he had very sinister intentions. He went to his sister's crib and picked her up. Amarjeet had done what he had done to his cousin, and he began strangling the 8-month-old baby. And obviously the baby started crying, and the parents were in the home. So the mother wakes up because she can hear cries coming, and she's assuming the baby needs to be fed. But this baby would never need to be fed again, unfortunately. When Amarjeet had heard his mother, he snuck away from the crib, and when the mother went in to pick up the baby, instantly she knew something was very, very wrong. Her 8-month-old baby was now deceased, and she knew exactly who had done it. As you can imagine, Amarjeet's mother was absolutely inconsolable. And she went to her son and screamed at him, "Did you kill your sister?" And without a care in the world, Amarjeet said yes, with a big smile on his face. He was proud of what he did. His father then slapped Amarjeet and asked, "Why did you do this?" And his response was just like that, again with a smile on his face. This time, the family wasn't able to keep it as quiet as the first time, because neighbors were catching on to what was happening in the home. Relatives as well were catching on to what was going on in the home, and they all recommended to Amarjeet's parents to contact the police. But Amarjeet's parents could not bring themselves to turn in their son. The parents went around to the neighbors begging them not to tell anyone what had happened. According to reports, Amarjeet's uncle knew exactly what had happened, but it was sort of culturally thought that if there's issues going on inside a home, That is a private family matter, and other people should not interject. Now, when it comes to murder, I would think that might be an exception to the rule, but unfortunately in this case, it was not. Once again, Amarjeet had committed a second murder and got away with it without any consequences. And to him, this was a fun game that he wanted to continue. One day in 2007, so Amarjeet is now 8 years old, he was wandering around a local school where he came upon a stroller with a baby laying in it who was unattended. Different sources tell this part of the story a little bit different. Majority of the sources say that the baby was in a stroller under a tree. And I had actually an Indian researcher help me with this. So I believe that in India, it's very clear that the baby was in a stroller under the tree. But in some sources that are, North American sources, sometimes it's suggested that the baby was left at a school or a daycare, and then Amarjeet went in and took the child. But I guess it really doesn't matter how he got a hold of this baby. The mother's name was Chun Devi. She left her 6-month-old baby, Khushbu, sleeping in the stroller underneath a tree. When Amarjeet saw this, he saw this as a very sick opportunity to continue his game. He picked up the baby and brought her to nearby mangrove forests. With another victim in his hands, he wanted to feel the thrill of killing once again. So he strangled Khushbu with his bare hands. He then picked up a rock and began hitting her over and over and over in the head. Once Amarjeet was satisfied with what he had done, he left the baby in the grass in the forest and just went home. When Chun, the mother of the baby, came back and saw that her baby was gone, she started getting everyone around her to help to start looking for Khushbu. So very quickly, there was a large amount of people. As soon as she said she needed help, everyone around her in the markets and everything came to help her search for her baby. And one person remembered that they had seen her baby with Amarjeet. And when they saw the baby with Amarjeet, they didn't think anything of it. They didn't know that Amarjeet had no business taking this baby or have any idea what he was doing, but they knew that they had seen Amarjeet with Khushbu. The police were then alerted and Amarjeet was brought in for questioning. And he very quickly admitted to what he had done to Khushbu. He also admitted to the 2 other murders he had committed that the police were completely unaware of. Amarjeet was finally arrested at 8 years old. Inspector Kumar started asking Amarjeet, why did you do this? And Amarjeet, he was having fun. Like, he was kind of giggling and, not taking the questioning serious. And I don't know if that's his age, because he's only 8 years old. So a lot of this, it's hard to know, was he acting like it wasn't a big deal because he was that sadistic? Or was it kind of because he was 8? Amarjeet could not care less. He said very little and he didn't really have any remorse or anything. Finally, he told the Inspector Kumar that if he would bring him a couple packs of cookies, then he would tell him everything. The cops were really surprised by this, and they really couldn't believe how nonchalant he was acting about the entire situation. And because the criminal that they're looking at is 8 years old, not only is it absurd, it's terrifying. So the police decided to give him 2 packs of cookies. And once he was given his cookies, he sat there munching away, happy as can be. But he then decided that because they had given him his cookies, he was going to show them where he had left Khushbu's body. And his confession was, I continued to hit her in the head with a brick until she died. Can you imagine those words coming out of an 8-year-old child's mouth? It's crazy. Police had everything they needed, especially with the confession, to make a case against Amarjeet. The issue was Amarjeet was so young. And according to Indian law, they could not charge him because of his age. What they did do is they sent him to a juvenile detention center. He was kept in an isolated room and he was given medication in hopes to improve his mental state. Psychiatrists who evaluated him questioned whether he really understood the difference between right and wrong. He was not afraid in front of police at all. And he had absolutely no remorse and no regret over what he had done. Psychiatrists also reported that they believed he had developed sadistic tendencies and he would take those out on anyone he saw weaker than himself. And considering he was 7 when he committed his first 2 murders, there's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of age groups that are younger than 7. They also speculated that it could be caused to an imbalance in chemicals in his brain. Something else to consider is there was reports that he was abused as a child, but none of that could ever have been confirmed by the police. But it's speculated that that is a possibility. And I think also it's hard to imagine how to reconcile a 7-year-old being a serial killer. It's a difficult thing to understand in an adult with a fully developed brain, but in a 7-year-old, it's even more confusing. He was also diagnosed with conduct disorder. If you don't know what conduct disorder is, it comes up a lot in child criminal cases. It's an antisocial disorder where the child is just extremely antisocial. And usually conduct disorder is developed through abuse. And when Amarjeet turned 18, he was given a new identity and released. And it's unknown where he is now. And if anything else has ever happened, it's unknown. And this was similar. The very first video I did on this channel was Mary Bell. And if you don't know who if you watch True Crime, you probably know who Mary Bell is. But if you don't, she was a double murderer and she was 11 years old. It's the first video on this channel. If you go back and watch it, it was my very first video. The information is good. My presentation and the visuals are horrific, but it's a good story. So if you go back and watch that video, maybe close your eyes and just listen. But it's very similar with the Mary Bell case, because Mary Bell as well was released and given a new identity. But I know that with Mary Bell, as far as we know, she never committed another crime. With Amarjeet as well, we don't know if they ever went on to commit other crimes. The other thing that's very different about Mary Bell in this case is Mary Bell had probably one of the most horrific childhoods I've ever heard of. If I was trying to create a childhood that would produce a serial killer, I would use Mary Bell's childhood as my basis of how to, if you were intentionally trying to create a serial killer, her childhood is what I would give that. Now, with Amarjeet, it obviously was suspected that there was abuse, but there was never anything conclusive to do with that. As well as when the murder happened, the family and the neighbors were very much like, this is a family matter, we stay out of it. So if a murder is something that is a family matter you stay out of, I would imagine abuse is something you definitely stay out of as well. So I don't know, I'm just speculating, but how else could a 7-year-old become a serial killer? Like, it's just crazy. So let me know in the comments what you think. And yeah, this is just a wild, crazy story. So just to let you know, the Halloween decorations are here, but the Halloween stories will be starting soon. I thought this was a great story to start spooky season, but there will be a lot more stories about Halloween related crimes coming up, and a lot of videos coming out this month. So if you haven't subscribed, definitely subscribe, because I'm about to come at you with video on video on video. And I really, really appreciate you all being here with me today. And yeah, love to hear your thoughts about this case down below. And if you'd like to support the channel, please stick around and watch another video. If you choose to watch the Mary Bell video, I'm so sorry. Please watch it with your eyes closed. And I will see you in the next one.